I spent 15 years of my life building what I thought would be the perfect fortress against the end of the world. And turned out I was an idiot who got almost everything backwards. My name's Trevor Walsh, and I need to say this right up front because it matters later. I wasn't some paranoid conspiracy nut living in my mom's basement reading message boards about government mind control. I was a systems engineer for a telecommunications company pulling in 6 figures annually. I had a mortgage on a nice 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Richmond, Virginia. I drove a Lexus. My wife, Diane, worked as a physical therapist at the hospital and made decent money herself. We were normal, successful even. But I had this thing in my head, this certainty that sat in my chest like a stone that someday everything was going to collapse, and the people who prepared would inherit whatever was left. Started when I was maybe 28 and watched some documentary about Chernobyl and how fast order just evaporated when the systems broke down. Got worse after Hurricane Katrina when I saw what happened when infrastructure failed for just a few days in New Orleans. Not worse like I panicked. Worse like I became methodical. Diane tolerated it at first. That's the word she used. Tolerated. When I started stockpiling canned goods in the garage, she rolled her eyes, but didn't fight me. When I took a wilderness survival course, she made jokes about me becoming Bear Grylls at dinner parties. When I bought the land, 40 acres of forest about 90 miles west of Richmond near the George Washington National Forest, she sighed and said it was my money to waste, as long as the bills got paid. The bunker, though. The bunker became the thing that almost destroyed our marriage 3 separate times. I didn't just dig a hole and throw some corrugated metal over it. I spent 15 years designing and building what I genuinely believed would be an impenetrable survival fortress capable of sustaining 2 people for up to 20 years without resupply. I'm talking about a structure buried 18 feet underground with 3-foot-thick reinforced concrete walls. Blast doors from a decommissioned military installation I bought through a government surplus auction. Air filtration system that could handle chemical, biological, and radiological contaminants. Geothermal heating and cooling. Solar panels hidden in a false clearing with battery banks that could power the place for weeks without sunlight. Water well with triple redundancy and a gray water recycling system. Hydroponics room with full-spectrum grow lights, freezers packed with 5 years' worth of meat and frozen vegetables, pantry with enough rice, beans, flour, and canned goods to last 2 decades if rationed properly. I had a medical bay with surgical equipment and enough antibiotics and medications to stock a small clinic. I had a weapons room with enough firearms and ammunition to outfit a militia. I had entertainment. Server racks loaded with every movie, TV show, book, and album I could digitize. I had a workshop with tools and spare parts for everything. I even had a small gym because I read somewhere that maintaining physical fitness during long-term isolation was crucial for psychological health. The place cost me somewhere north of $400,000 over those 15 years. Maybe closer to 500 if I'm honest. I did most of the construction myself on weekends and vacations with occasional help from a few contractors. I paid in cash and didn't ask questions. Diane stopped coming to the property after year 7. Said watching me pour my life into a hole in the ground made her physically ill. We almost divorced in year 9. She sat me down after I'd spent our entire tax return on a backup generator system and told me she couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't watch me obsess over something that was never going to happen. Couldn't pretend my paranoia wasn't affecting our life together. I told her I wasn't paranoid. Told her being prepared wasn't crazy. Told her that when something did happen, she'd thank me. She said if I cared more about my imaginary apocalypse than our actual marriage, then maybe we should just end it. We went to counseling, I agreed to scale back my prepping. Didn't stop. Just stopped talking about it as much. Kept building in secret. Kept stockpiling. Kept planning. Year 12, I finished the main construction. Year 13 and 14, I focused on systems testing and resupply. Year 15, I was doing final optimizations and running drills. Diane knew I still went to the property, but we had this unspoken agreement not to discuss it. She lived her life, I lived mine. We existed together in the same house like roommates who had sex occasionally and split the bills. Then June 7th, 2024. Everything I'd been preparing for actually happened, and it turned out I'd built the wrong kind of bunker, entirely. The outbreak started in Newark. That's what the news said initially. Some kind of rabies mutation that spread through bites and caused extreme aggression and deterioration of higher brain function. CDC put out alerts. State of emergency declared. National Guard mobilized. We watched it on TV like everyone else, thinking it would get contained, thinking the government would handle it. 3 days later, Richmond had cases. Diane came home from the hospital early, looking pale and scared, and told me they'd had 2 patients brought in who'd attacked nurses. Security had to shoot one of them. She'd never seen anything like it. People biting and tearing with their teeth and not responding to pain or commands. Moving wrong, making sounds that weren't human. I told her we needed to go. Now. Pack what she could carry in 10 minutes, and we leave. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Leave where? To your bunker? Trevor, that's insane. This is just some disease outbreak. They'll get it under control. I told her she was wrong. Told her this was what I'd been preparing for. Told her we had maybe hours before the city became a death trap. She wouldn't go. Said she had patients who needed her. Said running away to hide in a hole while people were dying was cowardly. We fought. I mean, really fought. Screaming match in our kitchen while the TV showed news footage of military checkpoints and burning buildings in Newark. She told me I'd been waiting my whole adult life for an excuse to prove I was right, and I was probably excited that people were dying. That hurt. That really fucking hurt. I left without her, threw our bug-out bags in my truck along with some last-minute supplies, and drove west toward the property. Told myself she'd call when she got scared enough. Told myself I'd come back for her if she asked. The roads were already getting bad. People leaving the city in droves. Traffic jammed up on I-64. I took back roads I'd scouted years ago specifically for this scenario. Made it to the property in about 3 hours instead of the usual 90 minutes because even the back roads had refugees and accidents and checkpoints. The bunker entrance was hidden in what looked like a maintenance shed about 200 yards into the tree line from the main dirt road. I designed it that way deliberately. Most preppers put their bunkers on their property, but made them obvious. Mine you'd never find unless you knew exactly where to look. The shed had regular tools and a lawnmower and looked forgotten. Beneath a false floor was a stairwell leading down to the blast door. I got inside and sealed it. Started running system checks. Everything worked perfectly. Air filtration humming. Lights on. Water pressure good. I sat in my command center. Fancy name for a room with monitors showing camera feeds from around the property, and watched my phone, waiting for Diane to call. She didn't call that night. The cell networks went down around 2 a.m. I watched it happen on the news feeds I could still access through my satellite internet connection. Total infrastructure collapse in major cities. Military losing containment. Reports of infected overwhelming hospitals and police stations. The president gave an address from some undisclosed location telling everyone to shelter in place and wait for help. Diane called on the landline I'd had installed specifically as a backup. 3 a.m, she was crying. Screaming, really. Said the hospital had been overrun. Said those things were everywhere. Said she'd made it to her car but didn't know where to go. I told her to come to the property. Gave her the directions and the access codes. Told her I loved her and to drive fast. She made it. Arrived just before dawn, looking like she'd aged 10 years in one night. Blood on her scrubs that she said wasn't hers. Eyes wild and terrified. I brought her down into the bunker and sealed the door behind us and held her while she shook and cried and told me I'd been right. Told me she was sorry for not believing me. Told me she'd seen people torn apart in the hospital parking lot by things that used to be people. That was 8 months ago. Now here's where I tell you how I got everything catastrophically wrong. The bunker itself? Perfect. My construction was flawless. Systems worked exactly as designed. We had power, water, food, climate control, security. From a pure engineering standpoint, I'd built exactly what I'd intended to build. But I'd based all my planning on assumptions about zombie behavior that turned out to be completely fucking inaccurate. See, I'd consumed every piece of zombie media I could find during my 15 years of prep. Movies, TV shows, books, video games, survival guides written by other preppers. I'd synthesized all that information into a threat model and designed my defenses accordingly. Zombies were slow, shambling corpses with limited mobility and no problem-solving ability. They responded to noise and movement. They'd cluster around obvious targets. The key to surviving them was being hidden, being quiet, and waiting them out until they rotted away or starved or whatever zombies eventually did. So I built a bunker designed for long-term hiding, deep underground, sealed tight, silent, invisible from the surface. The plan was simple. Get inside, lock the door, wait for the infected population to die off over a period of months or years, then emerge into whatever world remained. Except these zombies aren't like that at all. First major problem I discovered about 2 months in. I'd been monitoring the surface cameras and noticed the infected weren't wandering aimlessly. They were hunting, actively searching, moving in patterns that suggested they were tracking something. I watched groups of them, not herds, groups with apparent coordination, sweep through the forest around the property in what looked like search grids. They'd stop at certain points and all turn their heads in unison like they were listening, then move together toward whatever they'd detected. I watched them dig up a fox den and tear apart the foxes inside. Watched them surround a deer and bring it down like a wolf pack. They were predators, efficient ones. Second problem, they didn't rot. The documentaries and movies always showed zombies in various stages of decay, flesh falling off, bodies deteriorating, the assumption being that they'd eventually just fall apart from decomposition. These things didn't decompose. Something about the infection preserved the tissue, made it tougher somehow. I watched the same infected individuals on my cameras for months, and they didn't look any worse than when they first showed up. If anything, they looked adapted. Skin gone gray and hard, movement becoming more fluid and purposeful over time. Third problem, and this is the big one. They could sense underground structures. I don't know how. Body heat maybe, or vibrations, or some sensory ability the infection gave them. But about 3 months in, I started noticing infected congregating near the property. Not randomly, specifically near the bunker location. They'd stand in groups right above where we were buried and just wait. Listening, sensing. At first it was just a few, then dozens, then hundreds. I watched on the cameras as they gathered. They didn't try to dig at first, just stood there. Some of them would crouch down and press their heads against the ground, like they could hear us breathing 18 feet below. Diane noticed it too. Started getting paranoid, asking me if they could smell us or hear us or somehow know we were down here. I told her no. Told her the bunker was sealed and insulated, and there was no way for them to detect us. I was lying. I didn't know. The cameras showed them gathering in numbers that made my stomach hurt. 4th month, they started digging. Not random digging. Targeted excavation directly above the bunker's main structure. They used their hands mostly. Nails that had become claw-like, scratching at dirt and roots. Some of them used rocks or broken branches as tools. Actual tool use. I watched them dig down 3 feet, then 4, then 6. I'd built the bunker 18 feet down with 3-foot concrete walls specifically to prevent this scenario. But watching them work, I realized they'd reach the outer wall eventually. Maybe in weeks, maybe months. But they'd reach it. And then what? Could they break through 3 feet of reinforced concrete? Probably not. But I wouldn't have believed they could organize digging crews either. This is when I started understanding how badly I'd miscalculated. The bunker was a trap. I'd built an incredibly sophisticated underground prison that advertised our presence like a beacon and gave us no escape route if the walls were compromised. Every prepper manual said to have multiple exits. I had one door, one entrance/exit. That was it. Because I'd assumed the threat would be on the surface and easily avoided. Never considered I might need to evacuate the bunker itself while hundreds of infected surrounded it. Diane started asking about our options around month 5. Could we make a run for it? Where would we go? How long could we actually stay down here? I told her we had supplies for 20 years. Told her the walls would hold. Told her we were safe. But I was doing calculations in my head constantly, running scenarios. The digging had slowed when they hit harder soil around 8 feet down, but they hadn't stopped. They worked in shifts, some digging while others wandered off, presumably to hunt, then returning to dig more. They were persistent. That was the thing that scared me most. They didn't get bored or frustrated or give up. They just kept going. Day after day, week after week. I'd watch them on the monitors and feel this creeping certainty that eventually they'd reach us, and all my preparation would mean exactly nothing. The food situation is actually fine. That's the one thing I got completely right. The hydroponic system grows lettuce, tomatoes, herbs, strawberries. Not enough to live on exclusively, but enough to supplement. The freezers have meat. Venison I'd hunted and butchered myself. Beef I'd bought in bulk, chicken, pork. The pantry has rice and beans and pasta and canned vegetables and fruits. Rotation system kept everything fresh within its shelf life. We eat better down here than a lot of people ate before the outbreak. Diane does most of the cooking now. Gives her something to do. She makes these elaborate meals that take hours to prepare. Roasted venison with hydroponic tomatoes and herbs. Pasta with canned sauce enhanced with fresh basil. Rice and beans with spices. She said cooking makes her feel human. Makes her feel like we're not just surviving, but living. I maintain the systems. Check the air filters daily. Monitor the water purification. Test the power generation. Inspect the structural integrity. Run diagnostics on every piece of equipment. I've got maintenance schedules and checklists and logs documenting everything. Keeps me busy. Keeps my mind occupied instead of thinking about the hundreds of infected 12 feet above us digging slowly toward our ceiling. We've settled into routines. Wake up around 7. Breakfast. I do system checks while Diane tends the hydroponics. Lunch around noon. Afternoons she exercises in the gym or reads on the tablet loaded with books. I monitor cameras and update our supply inventory. Dinner around 6. Evenings we watch movies or play board games or just sit together. Bed around 10. Sex happens sometimes. Not often. Hard to feel romantic when you're living in fear underground. But sometimes we need that connection, need to feel something other than afraid. She'll touch my hand, or I'll kiss her neck, and we'll go to the bedroom area and try to remember what it felt like when we were just married people with normal problems like mortgage, payments, and whose turn it was to take out the trash. Month 6. Something changed. The digging stopped. Just completely ceased. I watched on the cameras as the infected above us stopped excavating and started doing something else. They were building, using the dirt they dug up and branches from the forest and what looked like debris scavenged from God knows where. Building structures around the dig site, not random piles. Deliberate construction, walls, barriers. I showed Diane, and she asked what they were doing. I said I didn't know. But I had theories, and none of them were good. They were either fortifying the area to defend it, or they were preparing for something. Maybe a sustained siege, maybe worse. Week later, I figured out what. They were building a camp, a fucking settlement. More infected started arriving. Hundreds became thousands. They weren't all digging anymore. Some were hunting in the forest and bringing back deer and smaller animals. Some were arranging stones into patterns that might have been primitive structures or might have been meaningless. But they were staying. Establishing presence. The infection was evolving them. Had to be. No other explanation for the level of coordination and behavior I was seeing. They were becoming something new. Still hostile, still dangerous, but more organized, more intelligent maybe, or operating on some kind of hive instinct. Diane stopped sleeping well around this time. She'd wake up in the middle of the night convinced she could hear them digging. I'd tell her the bunker was soundproofed and she couldn't possibly hear anything from the surface. She'd say she felt them then, felt their presence pressing down, the weight of all those bodies above us. I started having nightmares too, dreams where the concrete cracked and hands reached through, where the blast door failed and they poured down the stairs, where Diane got infected and I had to lock her in one of the storage rooms and listen to her throw herself against the door. I'd wake up sweating and check the camera monitors compulsively, make sure the door was sealed, count the infected visible on screen like some kind of deranged sheep counting ritual. Month 7. We had our first major system failure. Water pump in the well housing seized up. Not the end of the world. I had spare parts and redundancy. But it meant I had to do repairs, and I couldn't do them remotely. The well pump was in an access tunnel that branched off from the main bunker. I'd have to open a maintenance hatch and go into a space that was only 8 feet underground instead of 18. Diane asked if it was safe. I told her probably. The infected were concentrated around the main bunker location about 40 yards from the well housing. They shouldn't be near the access tunnel. Probably wouldn't even notice me working. I'd be quick, in and out in 30 minutes. I got my tools and went through the maintenance hatch into the tunnel. Narrow space. 4 feet high, so I had to crouch walk. Concrete walls, single work light. The pump housing was at the end of a 50-foot crawl. I could hear my breathing echoing, could hear my heart pounding. Kept telling myself the infected were nowhere near this area. Got to the pump and started disassembly. Seized bearing like I'd thought. 30-minute job became an hour because one of the bolts was stripped and I had to drill it out. Whole time I was hyper-aware of every sound. The bunker was soundproofed, but this access tunnel wasn't as well insulated. I could hear things. Muffled thuds. Scratching sounds that might have been tree roots against concrete or might have been something else. Finished the repair and was crawling back when I heard it clearly. Scraping directly above me. Rhythmic, deliberate. They were digging right over the access tunnel. Had to be. The sound was too close. too distinct. I froze there in the dark, cramped space, listening to something scrape against the earth, maybe 2 or 3 feet above my head. It stopped. Complete silence. Then a different sound. Wet, like breathing or sniffing. I held my breath. Didn't move. The sound moved along the tunnel line, following the path, following me. Whatever was up there knew something was below, could sense it. I waited in that tunnel for what felt like hours, probably only 15 minutes. The sound eventually moved away. I crawled back to the bunker as fast as I could and sealed the maintenance hatch behind me. Diane saw my face when I came back and knew something had happened. I told her about the sounds, told her they might know about the access tunnels. She asked if we should block them off. I said no, we might need them. Need alternate routes if the main structure was compromised. But I didn't go back into those tunnels after that. Dealt with minor maintenance issues remotely and just accepted that some things would have to fail. Month 8 is now present day. The infected above us numbers somewhere around 3,000 based on my best estimates from camera counts. They've built what I can only describe as a primitive town. Structures made of earth and wood and scavenged materials. Paths worn into the ground. Designated areas for different activities. Some of them hunt, some of them build. Some of them just stand guard around the perimeter. The digging has resumed, but slower. They're at about 15 feet now. 3 feet from the outer wall. I've started hearing sounds through the structure itself. Not loud, just vibrations. Tapping, scraping, transmitted through the concrete. Diane hears it too now. She doesn't say anything, but I see her stop sometimes and tilt her head. Listening. We don't talk about what happens if they breach the wall. Don't discuss contingency plans or escape scenarios because there aren't any good options. The blast door opens onto stairs that lead to a shed surrounded by thousands of infected. We have weapons. Plenty of them. But what are 2 people with guns going to do against 3,000 bodies that don't fear death? I've been reviewing my supplies inventory obsessively, looking for things I missed, tools I could repurpose, materials I could use to reinforce the walls or create defenses. I have welding equipment, have extra steel plating in storage, have enough ammunition to fight a small war, but no real plan for how to use any of it effectively. Diane asked me yesterday if I thought we'd die down here. Just asked it straight out while we were eating dinner. Venison stew with canned carrots? I told her no. Told her we'd be fine. The walls would hold. She looked at me with this expression like she was trying to decide whether to believe me or call me a liar. Then she just nodded and kept eating. Truth is, I don't know. I built this place to keep us alive during the end of the world, and it's working. We have food and water and power and safety. But I built it based on wrong assumptions about what the threat would look like. Built a fortress designed to wait out mindless corpses when what we're actually dealing with is something that learns and adapts and organizes. The bunker is perfect for the wrong apocalypse. I spend a lot of time thinking about what I should have done differently. Should have built multiple smaller caches instead of one centralized bunker. Should have prioritized mobility over fortification. Should have had vehicles stocked with supplies and multiple routes planned. Should have established a network with other preppers instead of going lone wolf. Should have built somewhere more remote where infected populations wouldn't concentrate. Should have is a useless phrase when you're locked underground, listening to thousands of former humans dig toward your ceiling. But it's all I think about sometimes. Diane's been different lately, calmer. She meditates now, sits in the hydroponics room with the lights and just breathes. Says she's making peace with things. I asked her what things, and she said everything. Death, mistakes, the way life turned out. I told her we weren't going to die, and she gave me this sad smile like I was a child who didn't understand. We had a weird moment 3 days ago. She was in the shower, and I heard her scream, ran to the bathroom thinking something catastrophic had happened. She was standing in the shower stall pointing at the drain. There was dirt, just a little bit, like sediment that had come up through the plumbing. I told her it was probably just buildup in the pipes, mineral deposits or rust. She said no, said it smelled like outside, like earth. I checked the water filtration system. Everything tested normal. No contamination, no breaches. But she was right about the smell. The dirt had this organic scent, fresh soil. I flushed the system and cleaned the drain and told her it was nothing. But I've been checking that drain every day since, watching for more dirt. So far, nothing, but I keep thinking about it. The cameras have been showing strange behavior from the infected. Some of them bring objects to the dig site: rocks, bones, pieces of metal. They arrange these items in patterns around the excavation. Circles, lines, shapes that might mean something or might be random. I've documented it all, taken screenshots, tried to find patterns or purpose. Diane thinks they're making art. I think they're marking territory or communicating somehow. One of them looked directly at a camera last week, just stopped what it was doing and turned its head and stared right at the lens. The cameras are hidden, camouflaged in tree bark or buried in the ground with just the lens exposed. Nothing obvious. But this one walked straight to the camera and looked into it. Didn't attack it, didn't touch it, just looked. I watched it stand there for 20 minutes, maintaining eye contact with the lens. Gray skin pulled tight over its skull. Eyes that had gone milky white. Mouth hanging open, showing teeth that had become jagged and stained. It just stared. Then it turned and walked away, like it had confirmed something. I haven't told Diane about that. She's already stressed enough. But it bothers me constantly. The implications of it. If they know about the cameras, they know they're being watched. If they know they're being watched, they know someone's watching. If they know someone's watching, they know approximately where that someone must be. Maybe that's why they're digging. Not random searching, targeted extraction. They know we're here and they're taking their time because they know we can't leave. I've started making contingency plans without telling Diane. Mapped out every inch of the bunker, identified choke points and defensible positions, calculated how long we could hold out in different sections if the main areas were compromised. The medical bay has a door that locks from inside. The storage area has only one entrance. The command center has monitors and tools that could be weaponized. I've been moving supplies, stashing weapons in multiple locations, ammunition caches hidden in different rooms, first aid kits distributed throughout, water bottles and ration bars in every section. If we have to fall back or evacuate quickly, I want resources available everywhere. Diane noticed me doing this and asked what I was preparing for. I told her just general readiness, maintaining protocols. She nodded, but didn't look convinced. That night, she asked me if I thought they'd get in. I said no. Concrete is too thick. They'd need industrial equipment. She asked, what if they had time? What if they just kept digging for months, years? Would the concrete eventually fail? I told her engineered structures can last centuries. The bunker was built to withstand bunker buster bombs. A few thousand zombies with their hands weren't going to crack it. She said okay. Went to bed. I stayed up watching monitors, watching them dig, watching them move dirt one handful at a time. Slow but relentless. There's been this sound lately. Low frequency, almost below hearing range, but I can feel it in my chest. rhythmic, like a heartbeat or machinery running. It comes from the walls. Diane feels it too. We'll be sitting in the common area and both notice it at the same time. This pulse, this vibration. We don't mention it to each other. Just acknowledge it with eye contact and go back to whatever we were doing. I tested the structural integrity last week. Pulled out the ground-penetrating radar unit I'd bought years ago for initial site surveying. Scanned the walls and ceiling. Everything showed solid. No cracks, no degradation, no breaches. The radar showed the excavation above us clearly. Massive cavity 15 feet deep. But the concrete between us and them held strong. 3 feet of reinforced barrier. Should be enough. Should be. That phrase again. Should implies uncertainty. The opposite of the confidence I'd felt when I built this place, when I poured that concrete and installed those blast doors and ran all those system checks. Back when I knew I was right, when I believed preparation meant survival. Now I'm not sure what I believe. The bunker works perfectly. Systems run like I designed them to. We have everything we need. But we're trapped in a box underground with thousands of infected directly above us and no way out. Is that survival? Or is it just delayed death? Diane and I had sex last night for the first time in weeks. Wasn't romantic, was desperate, clinging to each other like we could squeeze out some proof that we were still alive, still human. She cried after. Not sad crying, just releasing something. I held her and felt the vibration through the walls and thought about how I'd spent 15 years building this tomb. Because that's what it is. I can admit that now. Not a survival bunker. A tomb. High-tech, climate-controlled, well-stocked, but still just a box to die in. Maybe slowly over years as supplies dwindle. Maybe quickly if those things break through. But a tomb either way. I haven't given up. Want to be clear about that. I'm not suicidal. Not sitting here waiting to die. I still maintain the systems, still plan, still prepare. But the nature of the preparation has changed. Used to prepare for long-term survival. Now I prepare for last stands and final moments, and how to make whatever time we have left mean something. Diane's been writing. Found her yesterday sitting with a notebook I'd included in the supplies, writing by hand, long paragraphs, pages and pages. I asked what she was working on, and she said just thoughts, recording things, making sense of it all. I didn't push. If writing helps her cope, then good. We all need something. I've been thinking about trying to make contact with other survivors. The satellite internet still works intermittently. I could access forums or message boards. Post our situation, see if anyone else is out there. Maybe get advice or information. But every time I consider it, I remember operational security. Broadcasting our location or capabilities could attract human threats. Raiders or desperate groups looking to take what we have. The infected are bad enough without adding human predators to the equation. So we stay silent. Just the two of us in our perfect bunker, waiting, surviving, slowly going insane. Month 8 and week 2 now. Something happened. Big something. I was doing my morning camera check when I noticed movement at the southern perimeter. Not infected. People. Living people. A group of maybe 15 coming through the forest. They looked rough, malnourished, carrying improvised weapons and backpacks. Refugees, probably. Looking for somewhere safe. I watched them approach the property. They spotted the infected settlement immediately. Stopped about 200 yards out. Had some kind of discussion, pointing, gesturing, deciding what to do. The infected noticed them. Started moving toward them in that coordinated way they do. Not running, just converging. The people ran. Smart. Didn't try to fight thousands with their baseball bats and kitchen knives. They scattered into the forest, and the infected pursued. I tracked them on different cameras as they fled. Most made it out of range. But 3 didn't. 2 men and a woman. The infected caught them. What happened next, I won't describe in detail. Just understand it was brutal. Fast, the infected don't eat their victims, despite what the movies show. They just destroy them. Tear them apart. The 3 people died in under a minute. Then the infected left the bodies and returned to their settlement like nothing had happened. I sat watching those bodies on the monitor for hours. Diane came and saw what I was looking at and left without saying anything. The bodies stayed there all day, into the night. Next morning, scavengers had been at them. Coyotes, probably. By the afternoon, the bodies were gone, dragged off or fully consumed. Just dark stains on the forest floor. That could be us. The thought wouldn't leave my head. If we tried to make a run for it, if the door failed, that would be us in pieces in the woods. I showed Diane, and she said she knew. Said she'd been thinking the same thing. We didn't talk the rest of the day. The infected went back to digging after that, like the interruption had been nothing, just a minor disturbance. They're at 16 feet now, 2 feet from the ceiling. I've started hearing them more clearly. Scraping, breathing. Sounds that shouldn't transmit through 3 feet of concrete, but do anyway. Or maybe I'm imagining it. Diane says she hears it too, but maybe we're both imagining it. Maybe this is what happens when you live in fear long enough. Your mind creates the threats your ears can't detect. I tested the blast door mechanisms today. Cycled it open and closed a dozen times. Checked the hydraulics and seals and locking bolts. Everything functioned perfectly. In theory, we could open that door and evacuate in under 30 seconds. In practice, we'd open that door into a mob of infected and die in under 30 seconds. Diane asked me if I'd thought about just ending it ourselves. Said it calm, matter of fact, like asking if I'd thought about what to make for dinner. I asked if she was serious. She said she didn't know. Said sometimes she thought about taking pills from the medical bay, going to sleep and not waking up, peaceful, on our terms instead of theirs. I told her that wasn't happening. Told her we were going to survive this. She laughed, not mean, just sad. Asked me how. How exactly were we going to survive when we're trapped underground with an army of infected literally digging toward us? I didn't have an answer. Still don't. We've started rationing the power. Not because we need to. Solar panels and batteries still provide more than enough. But because I'm thinking long term, if we're stuck here for years, decades, components will fail, batteries will degrade. We'll need to stretch everything as far as possible. So lights go off in unused sections. Climate control runs on minimum settings. Entertainment gets limited to a few hours per day. Diane hates it. Says we have power, why are we sitting in the dark? I tell her we're preserving resources. She says we're preserving resources for what? For when? We'll be dead before the batteries fail. I don't argue because she might be right. I caught her standing by the blast door yesterday. Just standing there with her hand on the control panel. I asked what she was doing. She said thinking. Thinking about what's outside. What the world looks like now. If there's anything left worth surviving for. I told her there's us. We're worth surviving for. She didn't respond. The infected have started vocalizing, not moaning like in the movies. This is different. Sounds almost like language. Rhythmic patterns. Different pitches. They do it at night mostly. I'll be lying in bed and hear it through the structure. This weird, Chorus. Diane says it sounds like singing. I think it sounds like communication. I've been recording it, using the external microphones connected to the cameras, playing it back at different speeds, trying to find patterns or meaning. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm seeing patterns where none exist because my brain is desperate for something to analyze, something to solve. But I keep listening, keep recording. There's a crack in the ceiling of the eastern storage room. Hairline. Barely visible. I found it during routine inspection. Tested it with instruments. Superficial, surface level. No structural compromise. But it wasn't there before. I'm certain it wasn't there before. I check that room daily, and I know every square inch of this bunker. That crack is new. I haven't told Diane. She doesn't need another thing to worry about. I just monitor it, measure it daily, document any changes. So far, it hasn't grown. Stays exactly the same size, 0.03 inches long, 0.001 inches wide. Numbers I have memorized. Numbers I check compulsively. Maybe it's just settling. Structures settle. Concrete expands and contracts with temperature changes. Totally normal. Except this bunker has been stable for years, temperature controlled. No reason for new cracks to form unless there's external pressure, unless something above is putting stress on the structure, unless they're almost through. I've started sleeping with a pistol under my pillow. Loaded, safety off. Just in case of what I'm not sure. The infected breaking through would mean death, regardless of how many bullets I had. But having it there makes me feel slightly less helpless. Gives me the illusion of control. Diane noticed and didn't comment. She started sleeping with a knife. Kitchen knife from our utensil drawer. Sleeps with it tucked under her mattress. I saw her put it there. We don't discuss our bedtime weapons. Just another unspoken agreement. Another way we're preparing for something we know we can't survive. Food's still good. That's the ridiculous part. We eat 3 meals a day. Nutritious, varied. The hydroponics provide fresh vegetables. The freezers keep the meat preserved. We're not starving, not even uncomfortable. We're living better than probably 99% of humanity right now. And we're absolutely terrified every waking moment. It's month 8 and week 3, and I need to record what happened today because it changed everything. I was in the command center doing the usual morning check. Cameras, systems, inventory. The infected were doing their normal routines, digging, building, wandering. Then they all stopped. Simultaneously, every single one of them. Thousands of bodies just froze mid-action. They all turned toward the bunker location. Stood there, silent, staring at the ground. I watched this on every camera angle. Complete coordination. Then they started moving, all of them, converging on the dig site, organizing into groups. The digging groups dug faster. The others formed a perimeter, defensive positions. Something had changed. Some signal or trigger I didn't understand. But they knew. They all knew. This was it. Final push. They were coming for us. I called Diane, showed her the monitors. She went white, asked how long we had. I said I didn't know. Days maybe. Hours if they broke through the soil layer and hit concrete. We stood there watching them work. Frenzied now. Purposeful. Determined. Then I heard it. Through the ceiling. Through the concrete. Loud enough that there was no question, no imagination. Scratching, digging, impacts. They'd reached the outer wall. Were hitting concrete. Diane grabbed my arm. Asked what we do. I said we prepare. We arm up. We fortify the internal areas. We get ready to defend. She asked, defend how? Against thousands. I didn't answer. We spent the next hour moving supplies. Weapons to the command center. Food and water, medical kit, ammunition, everything we'd need for a siege. The scratching got louder, more frequent. Different sounds. Rhythmic pounding like they were using tools, rocks maybe, bones, whatever they could find. The crack in the storage room ceiling grew. I measured it. 0.05 inches long now, 0.003 inches wide, not superficial anymore, actually compromising structural integrity. I showed Diane. She asked if it would fail. I said not immediately, but eventually, yes. Everything fails eventually under enough pressure. We're sitting in the command center now, armed, waiting. The pounding continues. Constant, relentless. They're hitting the same spot over and over, trying to create a weak point. It might work. Given enough time, anything will crack. Diane asked me if I was sorry. Sorry for building the bunker. Sorry for dragging her into this. I thought about it. 15 years of work. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. My marriage nearly destroyed. All for this moment. Trapped underground while monsters literally beat on our ceiling. Was I sorry? I told her no. I did what I thought was right. Built what I thought would save us. That I got details wrong doesn't make the attempt invalid. We're alive because of this bunker. Fed and safe and protected for 8 months. That's not nothing. She said, but we're gonna die here. I said maybe. But we didn't die 8 months ago. We got 8 more months. That counts for something. She started crying. Said she wished she'd believed me sooner. Wished she'd helped instead of fighting me. Wished we'd had those 15 years as partners instead of adversaries. I held her and told her we were partners now. That was what mattered. She said it was too late. I said, it's never too late, until it's over. The pounding stopped, just suddenly ceased. Complete silence. We sat there waiting for it to resume. Minutes passed, nothing. I checked the cameras. The infected had backed away from the dig site. We're standing in formation, waiting, watching. Then I heard different sounds. Creaking. Stress. The structure itself protesting. I pulled up the ground-penetrating radar. Scanned the ceiling. What I saw made my stomach drop. The concrete showed fractures. Spider web patterns radiating from the impact point. Not failed yet, but compromised. Significantly compromised. Diane saw my face. Asked how bad. I told her the truth. Bad. The ceiling would hold for now, but any additional stress might cause catastrophic failure. We were looking at hours, maybe a day. She asked what we do. I said we had 2 options. Stay here and hope the ceiling holds, or make a run for it while we still control the door. She asked what I thought we should do. I told her I needed to think. Process the options, calculate odds. She said we don't have time for calculations. We need to decide now. Fight or flight. Which one gives us better chances? I thought about it. Really thought. The bunker was compromised, but not failed. We had supplies and weapons and defensive positions, but we'd be fighting thousands. Eventually, we'd run out of ammunition or they'd break through and it would be over. Running meant leaving safety behind. Going into a world full of infected with nothing but what we could carry. Almost certain death. But almost certain isn't certain. I told Diane we run. We pack what we can carry, weapons and ammunition, food and water for a week, medical supplies. We open the blast door and we move fast. Try to break through their perimeter before they can organize. Head for the vehicle cache I'd established 3 miles north. Old farm truck with full tank and supplies. If we make it there, we have mobility, options, chances. She asked when. I said now, right now. before they start pounding again, before the ceiling fails and we lose control of the situation. She nodded, said, "Okay, let's go." We packed in silence, backpacks loaded with essentials. I took 2 rifles and a shotgun. Diane took a pistol and extra magazines. We put on tactical vests I'd bought years ago, helmets, gloves, everything we had that might provide protection. We looked ridiculous, civilians playing soldier, but it was all we had. I stood at the blast door control panel, hand on the release. Diane beside me. We looked at each other. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Everything we needed to communicate passed without words. Fear, love, regret, determination. Acknowledgement that we'd probably die, but we were going to try anyway. I pressed the release. The hydraulics engaged. The door unsealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Began to swing open. Light from outside poured down the stairs. Real sunlight. First I'd seen in 8 months. It hurt my eyes. The infected noticed immediately. The vocalization started. That weird, almost language chorus. I could see them at the top of the stairs. Dozens, hundreds, filling the shed entrance, blocking our path. They didn't charge, just stood there, waiting, watching. I raised the rifle. Told Diane to stay close. We started up the stairs. Slow, controlled. Every step I expected them to rush us. They didn't. Just stood there, parting slightly as we ascended, creating a corridor, an opening. We reached the top, stepped into the shed, into sunlight. The infected surrounded us in a circle. Thousands of them. Silent now, just staring. I turned slowly. Took in the settlement they'd built, the structures, the organization, the sheer number of bodies. One of them stepped forward, the one who'd looked at the camera. I recognized the distinctive damage to its left cheek. It stopped about 10 feet away, looked at us, tilted its head, studying. Then it stepped aside, gestured with one arm toward the tree line, toward freedom. I didn't understand. Diane whispered, "What's happening?" I said, "I don't know." The infected weren't attacking. We're creating a path through their numbers, actively helping us leave. Why? The one who gestured made a sound, not a moan, not aggressive, almost conversational, like it was trying to communicate. I stared at it, gray skin, milky eyes, teeth that could tear flesh. But the expression wasn't hostile, was curious, maybe even concerned. It gestured again, more insistent, toward the trees. We needed to go. I grabbed Diane's hand, started walking. The infected parted. Let us pass. We walked through thousands of them. They could have killed us instantly. Instead, they watched, silent, allowing our passage. We reached the tree line. I looked back. The infected hadn't moved, were still standing there, watching us go. The one who gestured raised its hand, not threatening, almost waving. Goodbye or good luck, or we're sorry we scared you. I'll never know. We ran. Didn't stop until we'd covered a mile. Found a stream and stopped to catch our breath. Diane asked what the hell that was. I said I had no idea. Some kind of intelligence. Communication. They'd let us go. Actively helped us leave. Why? Maybe they'd realized we weren't a threat. Maybe they'd been trying to reach us not to attack, but to make contact. Maybe I'd been so convinced they were monsters I'd missed the signs of something else. Something new. An evolution beyond simple predator behavior. Or maybe they just wanted the bunker. Wanted the territory we'd occupied. Letting us go was easier than killing us and avoided damage to the structure. Maybe it was pragmatic. Strategic. Not mercy, but cost-benefit analysis. I don't know. Can't know. All I know is we're alive and moving and free. The bunker's behind us. All my preparation and planning and building, all those years of work, I walked away from it in 10 minutes, and the thing I'd been hiding from let me go. We found the truck where I'd left it, started it up, drove north. No destination, just away. Put distance between us and the bunker and the infected settlement and everything I'd built. Diane asked where we're going. I said, I don't know. Somewhere else. Somewhere. We can start over. Find other survivors, maybe. Build something different. She said, what about supplies? The bunker had everything. I said the bunker was a prison. We'll find what we need. We'll adapt. She was quiet for a while, then asked if I regretted it. The bunker. The 15 years? I thought about it. Really thought. All that effort and money and obsession. Built the wrong thing for the wrong reasons based on wrong assumptions. Should have been the ultimate vindication of my preparation. Instead, it nearly killed us. But we're alive. Against all odds and despite my mistakes, we're alive. The bunker kept us safe for 8 months, gave us time to understand what we were dealing with. Without it, we'd have died the first week. So no, I don't regret it. I just wish I'd been smarter about it, more flexible, less certain. We drove until dark, found an abandoned house, cleared it, secured it. Had dinner from our packs. MREs I'd included in the bug-out supplies tasted terrible. Didn't care. We were alive and free and together. That was enough. Diane asked what I learned from all this, from the bunker and the infected and everything. I said I learned that preparation matters, but adaptability matters more. That certainty is dangerous. That I can build perfect solutions to the wrong problems and kill myself with competence. She said she learned that sometimes the people we think are crazy are actually seeing something real. That dismissing someone's concerns because they seem paranoid is lazy. That she should have listened to me even when she thought I was wrong. We both got quiet after that. Tomorrow we'll keep moving. Find other survivors. Build something new. Not a bunker this time. A community, maybe. A group. Strength in numbers and diversity of skills and perspectives. No more lone wolf preparation. No more assuming I know everything. The infected let us go. I keep coming back to that. What it means. What they're becoming. Are they still the enemy? Or something else? Something we could potentially coexist with? I don't know. Not ready to find out. But the possibility exists, and that changes everything. Diane's asleep now. I'm on watch, sitting by the window with a rifle, looking at stars, real stars, not camera feeds. The night is quiet, peaceful. No pounding on concrete, no vibrations through walls, just wind and leaves and distance. I spent 15 years building a bunker to survive the apocalypse, and it took me 8 months to realize I'd built a tomb. Took thousands of infected digging toward me to understand that hiding isn't surviving. That safety without freedom is just slow death. The bunker's still there, 3 miles south, still functional, still stocked. Maybe someone else will find it, use it better than I did. Or maybe the infected will keep it, make it part of their settlement, their evolution. Either way, it's not mine anymore. I'm done building walls, done preparing for scenarios. From now on, I adapt. I move. I respond to what actually happens instead of what I think will happen. Maybe that kills me faster. Maybe it gets me killed tomorrow. But at least I'll die free instead of buried alive in my own perfect preparation. Diane's breathing is steady, peaceful. She's handling this better than I expected, better than I am, maybe. She was right that the bunker was crazy, wrong that preparing was useless. We were both partially correct and completely wrong. That's marriage, I guess. That's survival. Nobody has all the answers. We just do our best with incomplete information and hope it's enough. The stars are beautiful tonight. I haven't looked at stars in 8 months. Forgot how many there are. Forgot how small they make everything seem. My bunker, my preparation, my certainty. All of it microscopic against infinity. All of it meaningless, except that it kept us alive long enough to escape. Tomorrow we move. Find food. Find people. Find purpose beyond mere survival. Tonight we rest. We breathe. We exist in the moment instead of planning for the next crisis. It's not much. But after 8 months underground, it feels like everything. I was wrong about almost everything. Built the wrong thing, made the wrong assumptions. Nearly died because of my certainty. But I was right about one thing. Something was coming. The world did end, and preparation did matter even when the details were wrong. Diane's awake now. She's looking at me, asks if I'm okay. I tell her yes. Surprisingly, yes. She smiles. Says we should try to sleep. Big day tomorrow. I agree. Put down the rifle. Lie down beside her. Close my eyes. Feel her warmth, her breathing, her presence. We're alive. That's all that matters. We're alive and free and together, and tomorrow is uncertain, exactly like it should be. Thanks for watching, guys. I will be back with another story.